Hey, good morning, and welcome to 23 Degrees Sideways, Coyote in the Highlands. Wherever you are watching this, we're going to talk a little bit about solar systems today. Now, one of the ways to do a solar system is to build a large, centralized system where you've got 2,000 watts of panels or 2,500 watts of panels and a large battery bank and a single charge controller inverter unit, and you basically wire your house like it's a regular modern house. Some other people do it with all 12 and 24 volt and never use the inverter, or they'll use a small inverter for something that really requires electricity, like a rotisserie motor or something. We have an air fryer. We own an air fryer, and that's from the RV days or the van days. And it's cool, but I use it once in a while, and honestly, I use the generator for that because I just haven't built a system where I want to dump that much energy out of the batteries yet. So that's where we're at. Our method, I think, is one to look at and examine and might be ideal for different people. And what we're doing is we're doing multiple small systems, growing as we grow, because I don't want to get to normal American energy usage habits. Now, this isn't a green thing, okay? I don't see a significant difference in me and my life having 900 watts of solar versus 3,000 watts of solar and the extra lead acid batteries for the battery bank, because there's no reason to use lithium ion here when I can use flooded lead acid that will last forever if you take care of them right and manage your capacity right. And I do mean like decades. It's all in how your depth of discharge and your care and maintenance for flooded lead acid. It's a really good technology. Don't dismiss it. So what we do is right now I have a temporary system set up using the Jackery 1500 and 200 or 300 watts of Jackery panels at any given time. It's kind of modular and movable, I can disconnect one of the panels for the smaller Jackery when I need to. And that runs the washer. It's an RV washer, so it's not what you would think of as a household washer. We'll talk about that later. And it runs the 55-liter freezer, which is a 24-volt DC freezer. And that's a little temporary. We're going to go get one of the 5 cubic foot dedicated DC freezers as soon as I get the bathroom space actually permanently roofed and finished. But there's no sense in buying it yet, except supply chains, maybe. I have to think about that. And then I have my house system is currently in the tent, and that is 200 watts of Renogy panels. That's going to be expanded to 400 or 500 or 600 watts. Depends on some details. And then there's a couple of flooded lead acid batteries there. I'm going to expand that also, so that'll probably be a bank of, well, right now it's a bank of 2, and depending on whether I continue to use the same batteries, which are RV deep cycle batteries, or if I go to the larger residential Spartans, I'll either just add 4 more batteries to that bank, or I'll do a bank of 4 total of the larger batteries. We'll get to that when we get to that. That's supposed to be the bigger system once we get the outdoor kitchen finished and whatever the basic cabin near the outdoor kitchen is. That's running the Starlink, and that charges, right now that's most of what it does because it's only on 200 watts at the moment. It also does charge my laptop sometimes in the daytime. If you hear some background noise, that is actually the washer. It's going right now. So the idea of this system is that you have multiple smaller systems and you grow with your life. I don't have a need right now to have 1,000 watts for refrigeration. There's not going to be an air conditioner. There's a lot of stuff I just don't need that you might think of. A lot of our lights are solar powered, We have several little solar lanterns. We have several rechargeable lanterns. And I use kerosene lanterns. I use kerosene and I use white gas Coleman fuel lanterns also. And none of it's a big hassle. You know, I have some candle lanterns and such, but we don't really use them a whole lot unless there's people up here with us. Like when the kids are here, you can hear them in the background on some of the videos. But for us, just a couple of kerosene lanterns is really nice. I like the quality of the light much better than LEDs. And they're simple to maintain, they're simple to use. They don't require me to wire up a solar system for that purpose. That's kind of a key thing in what I'm talking about here. My dog just went to attack something. It was a lizard. So we're running, the Jackery is not what I would consider an ideal system unless you are semi-nomadic. And I'll do a review on it. It's actually a fantastic unit, the 1500. What I want to get at, though, is that if you are setting down a brick building, if you're pouring a foundation, if you're doing really permanent or initial work, the first thing you're doing is getting 10 yards of concrete delivered and slabbed out, the Jackery may not be the way to go. If you sometimes camp in your pickup truck, which we do, or a pop-up trailer, which we do, or just out in a tent in the desert, which we do. If you go and you travel sometimes for an entire season, because we spent a large part of the last fall and winter doing shows or bumming around the southern desert, then the 1500 is a really nice unit because you can charge it in the car, you can charge it while you're driving, you can charge it from a wall outlet, you can carry a couple of foldable panels and charge it from that. Even one panel will do most of what you need. Our energy needs are just not that great for this stuff. That's that's fine because it is mobile, it's movable, but it does serve very well. It'll run everything that I have that I need it to run except the air fryer, because the 1500 doesn't have a big enough inverter for the air fryer. Air fryers are just massive electricity hogs. I like them, and I'll talk about air fryers off the grid because they work very quickly, but we'll talk about that later. It's a huge amperage wattage draw, and that's the only thing you really don't run off of the Jackery, the 1500. Everything else in my life I could run, except that my energy needs at this point are continuously slightly higher than I can provide with that. It runs the freezer full time. It could run the Starlink full time. Running them both full time is very difficult. I either have to turn the Starlink off at 8, 9 p.m. and then turn it on in the morning, or I end up losing too much of the capacity on the 1500. It discharges all the way down to 10%, 10 to 17% overnight, and we're not into summer yet, so the freezer isn't working super hard. I don't think it's going to have to work super hard because I've moved it out of the tent and behind the earth-filled brick building, so that helps a lot. And that's just basically an idea of solar, and I haven't spelled it out yet. Multiple independent systems. Have one system that you know you can expand to a reasonable point. Okay, that's our Renogy 100 watt panels. They're easy to find, they're easy to buy, they're relatively cheap, they're pretty decent. They're not commercial grade panels, but they'll work. You know, I can stack that up to 500-600 watts, and then the easily purchasable RV batteries. I can get the RV deep cycle batteries at the RV store. There's one down in one of the towns, and I can expand and build that to a reasonable point. Okay, it's not going to be what most people would consider a full house point, but it'll be a pretty well stocked cabin level. If I need to go beyond that to 2500 watt residential systems, we'll look at that later. Okay, all of this stuff has a resale value, so none of it's like a complete waste. One system that you can expand to reasonable usage and then something like the Jackery, either a smaller system or a portable system. And the other thing about that is that I don't die up here, literally or figuratively, if I lose one of my solar systems. If one of these goes down, then I have to manage things. I have to manage my power, and I'm going to have to look at what I'm doing. I may have to turn on the generator once in a while. But I'm not dead in the water. My freezer isn't toast if I lose one or the other system. That's a really big deal, that redundancy. Now, the only other thing I want to bring up in the modular system is that we have a smaller Jackery 240. I would suggest getting the 500 instead of the 240. It's just a little bit more beef as far as some things go. But the 240 works wonderfully well for most of what we use it for. We use it to charge cell phones, and then I use it as a pass-through to solar power my workstation laptop. So my ThinkPad, which is a beefier, higher energy draw than, say, a tablet or a Chromebook, that will drain the 240 in very short order, okay? Very short order. It's a 45 watt charger. It's usually pulling 30 to 36 watts, but it can draw 45 watts, and that's a lot when you only have 240 watt hours nominal. So 45 watts for 1 hour, 2 hours is 90. You're at half charge already, functionally. You're not supposed to draw these things down to 0%. But if I plug in a panel to that 240, and it's a portable panel, so I can just orient it to the sun. I'm not losing anything with the whole panels face one direction and never move thing. I can run the laptop all day, and I'm basically running it off of solar. Like the 240 is acting as a charge controller, an inverter, a power conditioner, pure sine wave inverter. So that's a really useful concept. Something to think about, a concept for how you do your solar, is that some of these smaller units, you're not so worried about the battery capacity as whether or not you can use it as a solar pass-through. Now, that doesn't allow me a whole lot of use of the laptop at night from that power source. Very little, The battery will last for a while, so I can use it for an hour and a half after dark. I'm limited. It's not a limit I have a problem with because I tend to go to sleep when it's dark. But it's something to think about. Think of it as a pass-through for your solar, and it actually works out really well. The 240 will only accept 65 watts of solar, so running it off the 100-watt panel, it still only does 65. The 500 will do 100. I have to look at the specs again, might do 120. The 750, the 1000, the 1500 will all take lots of power. So I can do 400 watts on the 1500. I think the 1000 is the same. I'm not sure again. And that's it. So multiple small systems. Having a system like the Jackery, they're not the most cost effective. If you have X number of dollars to spend and this is it's your life savings, you're never going to be able to replace it or come back, it's kind of a waste. But if you have some income stream and can handle it a little bit, it's not horrible because it is extremely portable and extremely useful for general outdoor living. It's really handy for recharging power tools, the cordless power tools. I can run lights. I can actually run it. 1,500 watt hours is a pretty decent amount of energy storage for light use. I can plug in some LED lanterns and stuff, and it works pretty well. I could run a rotisserie for a grill for several hours without having to worry about it. It's a very useful box, and I think it's worth it for the way we're going about our homestead or escape property system, the way we're developing. If you're laying 8 yards of concrete and building a stick frame house and doing very traditional stuff, it's not for you, you're going to need the big traditional solar installation, just like you're doing a grid tie without the grid tie. If you're doing even smaller, if you're doing some of the things like living in a yurt, which we are doing, building a little off-grid cabin, you don't need any more than that for much of anything. Like, I've got lights, I've got tablets. The only thing that really kicks its butt is trying to do the small freezer. 55 liters is not much. It's a cooler sized freezer. And Starlink together. That's where I hit the wall with that. Otherwise, I could live off of it for the next 5 years. So that's all I got. No, it's not. But we'll talk about more in-depth solar stuff as I show you the systems later. Stay sideways.